Alright guys, I'm going to go over some stuff on the shifts of the supply and demand curve. I'm going to walk you guys through what happens to what we call our price equilibrium when we have increases and decreases in demand and supply. And then I'll go over a couple examples of when we have both the demand curve and the supply curve shifting at the same time. I need you guys to make sure you're following along as I draw these curves up. Draw everything I draw, label everything I label, because the labeling piece will be very important, especially as we start our shifts. Okay? So the first example says what happens when the demand curve shifts with an increase. But to understand some of this first, we have to identify the fact that we have a demand curve, we'll label D1, and a supply curve, we're going to label S1. Okay? Our equilibrium price, we can label that E1 in the middle. This is important to know. We haven't really talked about this yet, but our equilibrium price, PE for price equilibrium, and QE for quantity equilibrium, this is the point that the market wants to be at. All right? This is the point that the demand, the consumer, and the supply curve, the producer, come together. All right? And they agree on that particular price and quantity they're going to supply to the market. All right? So we have to understand that the statement I kind of use for that is to say that this is the point where the place where the market wants to be. All right, so as things happen, equilibrium kind of moves to a new point. All right, because that's where the market wants to be. So in this scenario here, if we have a demand curve shifts with an increase, we know a shift of the demand curve is to the right. So let's all draw a second demand curve to the right of the first one. We'll label that D2, so we know that's our second demand curve. Go ahead and put in a price point here. This is our second equilibrium point. Okay, should make sense. Let's bring it out to the outside here. We have our second price point and our second quantity point. So what I need you guys to figure out then as we go through these is when that shift happens, what happens to our price and our quantity. All right, we can see that when we made that shift, our price equilibrium went up and our quantity equilibrium went up or increased. All right, so down here you can either write increase, or if you just simply want to put two up arrows, that's fine as well. All right, because we're identifying that this shift caused an increase in price and an increase in quantity. All right, so let's do the second one. Again, same thing. Each one of these will start off the same way. We'll have a demand curve, D1, supply curve, S1. We're going to have an equilibrium point. Bring this point out. We have P1 and Q1, or QE and PE. Doesn't really matter what you write down. So this time we have there's a what happens when the demand curve shifts with a decrease. So we're going to shift it to the left. All right, whatever this product is, there's less demand in the market for this product. So our demand curve shifts to the left with a decrease, and our new equilibrium point is here. So let's figure out what happened P2 and Q2. So when we have a decrease in demand, this causes our price to decrease and our quantity to decrease. Okay? So again, you can write decrease, or if you want to put arrows pointing down to represent a decrease, that's fine. So think about this in the real world, all right? What's something that has seen a decrease in demand over the years? Let's say those fidget spinners, okay? So the demand for fidget spinners goes down, all right? That makes sense because the price then came down, because if people aren't demanding them anymore, the only way they can get rid of them is if they sell them at a lesser price. Well, if people aren't buying them, or people aren't willing to pay the higher price, then supply, the quantity is going to decrease as well. Okay? So those are the first two. Okay, let's go ahead and erase this. And I'll slide up the sheet so you guys can do the next two with me as well. Alright, so same concept here, we're shifting the supply curves now. Okay, so we have a demand curve, D1, supply curve, S1, our point of equilibrium, price equilibrium, quantity equilibrium. Same thing, all right? Nothing, this is going to be very repetitive. We're going to start all these the same way each time. This time we see what happens when the supply curve shifts with a decrease. So let's say it's costing more to produce this particular good. The cost of inputs goes up. Our supply decreases with a shift to the left. So now we have a new supply curve. We have a new point, E2 of equilibrium. So when this happens, cost of inputs increases, so our supply decreases. What happens to our price and quantity equilibrium? So we can see that when this scenario takes place, our price equilibrium increases, our quantity equilibrium decreases. So we can go ahead and write this down. Price goes up, quantity goes down. Okay? And then for the last one, we got our demand curve, our supply curve, oops, should be a 1, our equilibrium point, P1 or Q or PE, whatever you want to put down, and Q1. This time's what happens when the supply curve shifts with an increase. So let's think of iPads or tablets. Over the years, we had an increase in the amount of people that supply them, so number of firms that produce them, increasing the supply of this particular product. So our supply curve shifts to the right with an increase. We have a new point of equilibrium. A new point for price. So when this happens, more firms produce the tablets out there. This makes sense. Over the years, what's happened to the price of tablets? They've gone down because there is more quantity supplied in the market. More competition causes that price to decrease. The quantity supplied to the market increases. So let's go ahead and match that up. Price went down. Quantity supplied went up. Okay, so that's the first page. We're just looking at single shifts. All right, on the next video, we're going to look at what happens when we have multiple shifts taking place. The supply curve and the demand curve move at the same time.